This podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Legend of the Bones. Following in the footsteps of giants, Legend of the Bones is a chimera. A mix of old-school tabletop RPG and dark fantasy storytelling. As its name might suggest, in Legend of the Bones the dice rule. There'll be no rerolls, no fudging the dice, no metacurrency. The roll of the bones will determine the character's destiny, and no one will be spared their fate. None shall escape the destiny of bone. Last time on Legend of the Bones. Having been grievously wounded by a grotesque human-like monster, Lena was miraculously healed by the Nine, and having been so, was charged by the god, Solon, to cleanse Penmalkine of its corruption. The companions investigated the final chamber of the Outer Vault, discovering a cache of manuscripts. Among them, Valen found a scroll which detailed a ritual of sealing, though its purpose was not fully clear. The manuscript described the need to wear enchanted torques identical to those worn by the mummified wardens. Back in the grim dormitory, Valen surmised that the torques offered protection against Penmalkine's corruption. He proposed that the creature that attacked them may have been the fifth warden, mutated and corrupted after losing or removing his own torque. Placing one of the torques about his own neck, Valen found the artifact increased his sense of well-being, and having seen the mage suffer no ill effects, the others followed suit. With the Outer Vault explored, the companions ventured deeper, continuing along a corridor decorated with carvings of hell-spawned beasts, until they reached a magically sealed stone door, a riddle carved into its frame. Valen was able to unravel the mystery. The door required the blood of one of the keepers of the Hellstones. Remembering Amos's counsel in the Chamber of the Ancestors, Valen, whilst not in possession of the Eye of Mordgrim, was still the Hellstone's keeper. The mage cut himself with his dagger, and pressing his bloodied hand to the stone, the seal broke, revealing a stairway descending down into the darkness. Chapter 62, Part 1, Day 61, Evening. Party status: Beric, 49 out of 43 hit points. Lena, 34 out of 34 hit points. Valen, 20 out of 21 hit points. Talion, 32 out of 32 hit points. Spells available: Valen has memorized Charm Animal, Push, Shield, Soothe, Revive, Clairvoyance, Ignite, and Dragon's Breath. Talion has memorized Resolve, Poetic Prose, Pitch, Imbue, and Lullaby. Lena can pray for 1 first-level miracle, 2 second-level miracles, 2 third-level miracles, 1 fourth-level miracle, and 1 fifth-level miracle. Valen winced as Lena dabbed gently at the raw, inflamed wound across his palm. Her touch was delicate, but the injury throbbed beneath her careful ministrations. The sting of healing herbs mingled with the warmth of her fingers as she wound a strip of linen around his hand, drawing it snug with practiced precision. Though her brow was furrowed in concentration, Valen knew her too well to mistake it for mere focus. There was worry visible in the corners of her mouth. As she finished securing the bandage, Valen reached out with his uninjured hand and tilted her chin upward, coaxing her to meet his gaze.
"Thank you, Vinariad."
The words came in a low murmur, tender and intimate, accentuated by the Wayland term of endearment. He pressed a gentle kiss to her brow, and she responded with a faint smile, small, fleeting, and far from convincing. He did not question her bravery. He knew it was not fear for herself that troubled her, but the riddle guarding the inner vault. Its cryptic phrasing had hinted at an ominous fate, that the keepers of the Hellstones were bound to a grim destiny. And now, by using his blood to open the portal, Valen had confirmed that he bore that burden. Now was not the time to discuss it, and even so, at that moment Talion appeared, having returned from Penmalkin's entrance. A moment after the portal to the inner vault had opened, a distant scraping noise had been heard echoing from that direction, and the bard had subsequently gone to investigate. Talion's face was pale and set.
"The entrance is sealed shut,"
he reported with grim finality.
"We are trapped."
Beric swore under his breath, and Lena made a gesture of blessing. Valen, however, merely nodded, unsurprised.
"It is as the apprentice's diary said,"
he reminded them.
"Whoever built Penmalkin must have designed it as a failsafe, lest whatever resides in the lower vault should escape. That's a cold comfort,"
Beric observed wryly.
"But since we have no choice, we should press on."
With that, Beric turned to the threshold of the portal. The stairs beyond descended into a gaping abyss. No walls flanked the path, only blackness. Taking a breath, he stepped forward, the others following behind. Valen first, holding the moonstone, then Lena, with Talion bringing up the rear. Soon, a rock form loomed ahead, and the stairs passed through a tunnel. As they descended, the silence grew oppressive, broken only by the companion's soft footsteps on the cold stone. The descent seemed endless. Beric counted over 100 steps before the tunnel opened into a cavern, where the stairs terminated and the ground dropped away some 20 feet to a large body of still water below. A narrow bridge of rock arched over the gulf, before the path disappeared once more into a tunnel on the far side. Beric slung his shield onto his back and tested the bridge with his foot. Satisfied that it seemed solid enough, he ventured out, across the span. Little do the companions know, but this underground lake is home to a monstrous creature. The lake itself is linked to the lake outside by a number of narrow channels. Their size prevents the creature from leaving its lair, but do provide a point of ingress for unwary fish and freshwater krill, which have sustained the beast for a millennia. The prospect of a more substantial meal, however, would certainly be welcome. Having said that, the underground lake is large, stretching beyond the limits of the cavern, so it's not a given that the creature will become aware of the party. I'm going to ask the Oracle, does the denizen of the deep detect the companions? A 3. That's a no but. Well, that is a relief. But given what could have been, I think that but means that there needs to be a cost. And I know exactly what it is. Beric advanced with slow, measured strides, leading the companions onto the narrow stone span that bridged the lake. Each footfall echoed faintly off the rock, swallowed quickly by the silence. The warrior's breath caught in his throat as he took in the surreal marvel beneath his feet. A bridge hewn directly from the mountain, its arch stretching for more than 40 feet over the dark water. It seemed a structure beyond mortal craft, at least unlike anything he'd ever seen, His eyes drifted down to the black surface below, unnervingly still, like glass laid over the abyss. The faint glow of the moonstone, clutched tight in Valen's hand, glimmered against it, casting a silvery sheen that reflected softly off the lake's surface, yet failed to illuminate even a finger's length into its depths. It was as though the water swallowed light whole. By the time they reached the midpoint of the bridge, Beric realised how tense he had been. The strain in his limbs, his jaw, his breath. He let it go with a quiet exhale, relief trickling through him, cool and fleeting. But then, just as he stepped beyond the bridge's apex, a sharp cry rang out behind him.
Valen!
Lena's voice cracked with panic. Valen had stumbled, his boot having caught on a jagged chunk of stone where the bridge had fractured.
Oh!
He pitched forward, arms outstretched in instinct, and the moonstone slipped from his grasp. Time slowed. The glowing gem spun through the air, the light spiralling as it tumbled, straight through the space between Beric's legs. It struck the stone of the bridge once, then again, bouncing and rolling towards the edge. A breath, a heartbeat, and it would be lost, claimed by the fathomless black.
Yeah!
With a strangled shout, Beric lunged. He hurled himself forward, mail clinking, fingers outstretched. He could not let it fall. Without the moonstone, they would be plunged into pitch darkness, and he dared not guess how many torches remained among them, if any. The moonstone bounced again on the rough stone, then teetered on the edge. Beric stretched, his muscles and tendons burned, his fingers agonizingly close. This is a pretty desperate situation. Whilst the party do have both torches and lamp oil, being plunged into total darkness on this narrow bridge would be fraught with danger. I'll cross that bridge, excuse the pun, if it comes to it, because I'm going to give Beric a chance to save the moonstone. To do so, the warrior will need to make a dexterity check. Beric will need to roll a 12 or less to succeed. Here is the roll. A 12! Would you believe it? Right on the money. The companions have been fortunate, but the dice gods are capricious, and I wonder how long their luck will hold. Chapter 62 Part 2 Day 61 Late Evening. Party status. The party status is unchanged. Beric's fingers closed around the moonstone at the very last instant, snatching it from the void just as it tumbled off the crumbling edge of the bridge. The sudden relief hit him like a wave. His muscles, taut with the strain of the reach, gave out all at once. With a heavy grunt, the big man collapsed onto the cold, damp stone, chest heaving. For a moment, he simply lay there, the gleaming gem clenched tightly in his fist. Then, with a low groan, Beric pushed himself upright and extended the moonstone to Valen. The mage took it gingerly, his cheeks reddened with shame. He averted his gaze, unable to meet Beric's eyes.
"Forgive me,"
he said, low and apologetic. Beric clapped him on the shoulder.
"No harm done."
The warrior's voice was easy, brushing the incident aside without a second thought. "Come on." Without further ceremony, Beric turned and strode off the bridge, vanishing into the tunnel beyond. Valen and Lena followed close behind. Talion, however, lingered at the rear, casting a wary glance back the way they had come. He turned to follow the others, but just as he placed a foot into the threshold of the tunnel, the sound of a disturbance in the water echoed through the cavern. Something immense, was groping at the bridge from the black waters below. Talion froze. He turned, just for a heartbeat, and what he saw etched itself into his memory with icy precision. A mass of writhing tentacles searched for prey where their companions stood just moments before. They belonged to an ancient abomination, a thing beyond mortal reckoning, twisted by time and malice, glistening wet in the darkness. No eye could truly comprehend its form. It defied description, as if nature itself had rejected it. A cold dread clawed up Talion's spine, paralysing. Yet even as horror rooted him to the spot, reason prevailed. The thing would not be able to fully leave the water and follow them into the narrowness of the tunnel. Wordless, Talion stepped backward into the shadowed passage, never turning his back until the thing was out of sight. Then he spun and quickened his pace, catching up to his companions in silence. He said nothing of what he had seen. Now was not the time, and speaking of it would only add to the unease that they all felt in this cursed place. The passage sloped gently down, the walls pressing close on either side, which seemed to drink the moonstone's light. The companions' footsteps echoed softly in the confines, and as they descended, the stale air grew noticeably cooler, carrying with it a faint edge of sweet decay that clung to the back of the throat. After another 50 feet or so, the corridor came to an abrupt end at a T-junction. The gloom parted slightly, as the faint light illuminated a curious marking on the floor. Etched deep into the stone, much like the one they had seen in the Outer Vault's library, was a pentacle. But this one was different. This time, at the termination of each point, a distinct symbol or glyph had been painstakingly carved, each one radiating a quiet menace. The moonstone's glow caught the ridges of the carvings, throwing the lines into sharp relief and causing the shadows to pool in the grooves like blood. Valen crouched beside the design, his eyes narrowing as he examined the shapes. At the topmost point of the star was a closed eye encased within a circle of jagged chains. Moving clockwise, the next 2 points bore a fractured anvil, its fragments splayed like bone shards, and a serpent curled into a perfect ring as it swallowed its own tail. The final 2 points depicted more grotesque imagery. A withered hand clutching a rotting heart crawling with worms, and a mouth, vertically aligned, suggesting a vulva, lips peeled back to reveal not teeth, but a writhing cluster of tongues. Lena stepped forward, her expression darkening as her gaze swept over the symbols. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and certain.
These are the marks of the 5.
The pentacle carved onto the floor offers a glimpse of what lies in either direction of the T-junction. One way, the companions will face challenges associated with Felik, the god of pestilence and decay, and Selethra, the goddess of lust and gluttony. While the other way, the obstacles will be in the domains of Varlak, the god of wrath and destruction, and Krevik, the god of greed and envy. Both directions hold peril, but which one will they choose? I think the companion's instinct would be to follow the direction of Krevik, given it was that hellstone which has brought them to Penmelkine. However, I think I'm going to make a wisdom check for Lena, to see whether the cleric makes the association between the positions of the symbols and the right direction. With Lena having recently lost a point of wisdom, the cleric needs to roll a 16 or less to succeed. An 18! Well, that is a surprise. Well, in that case, with no other clues to guide them, the companions will choose randomly. A high-low roll on a d20 should do it. High will be left, low will be right. A 7. Very well. Right, it is. Chapter 62, Part 3, Day 61, Late Evening. Party Status. The party status is unchanged. The tension hung heavy among the companions, as much as their unspoken fear. Everything about this place was wrong, steeped in a creeping, unnatural menace. Even the walls themselves seemed too close, and the sensation was suffocating. None of them wished to remain, but they had to find the Eye of Krevik, and besides, the reality was inescapable. They were trapped in Penmalkine. If there was any hope of escape, they would need to find a way to reopen the sealed entrance. Rightly or wrongly, Beric bore the burden of leadership. Neither Lena nor Valen could glean any insight from the strange markings etched into the stone floor. Nothing offered guidance. No glimmer pointed the way. Yet the decision before them was stark in its simplicity. Left or right. With no further signs to guide them, Beric reached into his coin purse and slid out a single shilling.
"Heads we go right,"
he muttered, his voice low and dry. The coin spun into the air, catching the dim light as it rose, before falling with a metallic ring that echoed unnervingly down the corridor. There, staring back at them from the floor, was the solemn profile of the king. With grim resolve tightening his jaw, Beric turned and led them down the right-hand passage. They had only advanced 30 feet or so, when the faintest flickering glimmer of torchlight danced in the distance. Beric paused and glanced back to the others, his eyes silently warning them to be ready. Valen slid the moonstone into his pouch, plunging the companions into near darkness, lest its glow should alert any enemies ahead. Cautiously they advanced, and as they drew nearer, Beric could see the corridor terminated at a broad, doorless archway that opened into a wide chamber. A cold sweat broke out across his back, and he shifted his grip on the hilt of Callus Cledar. He paused just shy of the threshold, scanning what he could see of the room. It was roughly 40 feet across, dimly lit by a single guttering torch in a rusted sconce. Opposite the archway, a short straight passage promised another exit. To the right, a partial collapse had shattered the masonry. Several stone blocks lay scattered, like the broken teeth of some buried giant. Behind them, a narrow gap, 4 feet wide and barely half as tall, led to some unknown black space. A faint rustle, followed by the metallic clink of something, shifting just beyond his line of sight, snapped Beric to attention. He was not the only one to hear it. The others were readying themselves for conflict. In this cursed place, there was little chance that whatever made the sound was a friend. Beric inhaled slowly, then raised his shield. Without a word, he stepped into the chamber. Rounding the arch and glancing into the full breadth of the room, Beric froze. Nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. At the far end of the chamber, upon a low dais, stood a throne, carved with strange, hellish patterns and symbols. On either side of it was a staggering heap of skulls. Hundreds, perhaps more, piled high, the grim trophies of some infernal malevolence. Behind the throne, a second passage slipped away into the darkness, but that would have to wait. For seated upon the throne was a figure shaped like a man, though it radiated something far older, far darker. It was clad in mail, blackened as if charred by the fire, and resting upon its armoured lap lay a massive two-handed axe. Its helm concealed all, a curtain of mail draped down like a veil of death, hiding the face entirely, except for a pair of cruel eyes, as cold as the void. With slow, deliberate motion, the figure rose, its form towering almost 7 feet. Such was its size that Beric felt dwarfed in its presence. Then came its voice, Thin, hollow, yet rasping.
Entering combat.
The companions have encountered the Reaver of Varlak. Once a mortal, the Reaver was a disciple of the god of wrath and ruin, and known for his brutality, cruelty and violence. Such were the extremes of his depravity, that the Reaver was marked by Varlak to claim souls for the dark gods, bestowing upon him a weapon of terrible power. When the Reaver was eventually killed, Varlak restored him to an immortal life, but limited to guarding the rift here at Penmelkine. Immortal he may be, so far as nourishment, age and disease are concerned, but the Reaver is very much physical, and can be harmed by normal weapons, with the exception of being immune to fire. The Reaver is an 8th level fighter, with an ascending armor class of 18. His two-handed axe, known as Soul Cleaver, deals 1d10 plus 4 damage. In addition, following a successful hit, the target must make a save versus death or lose 1 level of experience, including any associated hit points and ability increases, as the weapon claims part of the victim's soul. Narratively, anyone killed by this weapon loses their soul for an eternity of torment in hell. So let's roll the Reaver's hit points. 35, that's above the half min out. Right then, let's get to it. Round 1. I'm going to rule that neither side is surprised. Initiative, the Reaver. A 5, the party. A 3. As we have just heard, the Reaver is pleased to be presented with a worthy opponent, so unless I specify otherwise, he will focus his attacks on Beric. The Reaver charges forward, swinging Soul Cleaver in a sweeping arc. He will need a 9 or more to hit Beric. A 4. The warrior decides the attack is too powerful to block with his shield, and instead ducks, leaving the axe to whistle over his head. Valen will attempt to cast Push. The mage will need a 17 or less for his casting roll. A 14. The mage outstretches his hand and speaks the incantation.
Bither ehi fod Gutheri.
An invisible force slams into the Reaver, knocking him back 8 yards. He crashes into the throne, sending skulls flying, taking 4 points of damage. Now to see if the Reaver is knocked prone. A roll of 1 to 3 means he will be. A 1! Dazed by the impact, the Reaver will lose his next turn. Talion already has an arrow on his bowstring. He shoots. An 18 is a hit for 5 points of damage, as the arrow thumps into the Reaver's back. Beric rushes forward, callous Cledder gleaming in the torchlight. The warrior will need a 10 or more to hit. An 11 is a hit for a total of 11 points of damage. The enchanted blade bites deep into the Reaver's shoulder, splitting the rings of his mail in a spray of black blood. Lena also runs forward, swinging her warhammer. The cleric will need a 15 to hit, but with a 5, the Reaver manages to roll and catch the shaft of the warhammer. With his immense strength, he shoves Lena back. Well, that was a great start for the party. The Reaver has lost more than half his hit points in the first round, and will also miss his next turn. Could this be over before it started? Let's find out as we enter Round 2. No initiative. Valen is going to stay out of harm's way for now. Talion knocks another arrow and shoots, but with a 3, the arrow flies wide of its mark and shatters the skull. Beric, now himself towering over his enemy, brings callous Cledder down in an overhead strike. A 2! The Reaver grabs his axe and has just enough time to knock the blade aside. Lena moves forward again, trying to land a blow. A 5. Again, the Reaver uses his axe shaft to parry the blow. That was really disappointing, and by not finishing the Reaver off, it may cost the party dear. Round 3. Initiative. The Reaver. A 6. The party. A 3. The Reaver leaps to his feet with astonishing speed, catching the companions off guard. He whirls his axe over his head and brings it down towards Beric. A 9 is just enough. The axe head clears the rim of Beric's shield, slamming into the warrior's left shoulder for a total of... Oof! 14 points of damage. There is a sickening crunch as mail splits and Beric's collarbone is broken. Blood sprays from the wound. Beric cries out in agony, dropping his shield and falling to one knee. And the danger remains. Beric must now make a save versus death or lose a level of experience and its associated benefits. Fortunately, the enchanted talk gives the warrior a +4 bonus to this kind of save, meaning he needs to roll just a 6 or more. Here is the roll. A 9. For a moment, Beric feels like part of his essence is being sucked from him. He grits his teeth, then releases an enormous shout of defiance, pushing the curse away. That was too close. The party needs to end this fight, and fast. Talion looses another arrow. A 15 is a hit for 4 points of damage as the arrow strikes the Reaver square in the chest. Having seen what has just happened to Beric, Valen will not risk getting into melee unless he cannot help it. Lena tries to divert the Reaver with her own attack. But with an 8, the Reaver parries the blow with his axe shaft once again and pushes the cleric away. Beric really needs to land a blow here. A 12 is a hit for a total of 11 points of damage. That's enough. The Reaver stares down at the bleeding and kneeling warrior.
Your skull shall make a fine trophy.
He hisses, raising his axe for the killing blow.
Souls for the Lord of Ruin.
He cries aloud. Beric sees his chance. Mustering his strength, he pushes upwards, thrusting Callous Cledder up. The point of the blade slides under the mail curtain of the Reaver's helm, into the underside of his chin. Beric screams in fury, thrusting the blade deeper until it punches out of the helmet's crown in a splatter of blood and brain. The Reaver's eyes stare wide, fixed lifelessly in shock. Then his huge body topples and falls, scattering skulls over the floor. The battle is over. Thank you for listening to Legend of the Bones. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you like what you've heard, then please consider rating and reviewing the show in your podcatcher of choice. Not only do I love seeing the feedback, but it really does help the show to reach new listeners. As always, where would I be without my amazing cast of voice talent? Returning to the show, this time as the Reaver of Varlak, is Robin Sampson. Robin is the creator of Stories from the First Watch, a hybrid solo play audio drama. If you like what I do here, then you should definitely check out Robin's show. It's ace! I'll put Robin's links in the show notes. You can also help by liking or reposting new episode announcements, or by recommending the show online or to a friend. You really can't beat the power of word of mouth. Alternatively, if you would like to show your appreciation by buying me a metaphorical cup of tea, then I have a Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/Legend of the Bones. Any donations will go towards the show's running costs. I also have a range of merchandise, which can be found at www.redbubble.com/people/legendbones. All items are presented at zero markup. I make no money from them. It's purely to give something back to fans of the show. Finally, I'd love to know what you think of the show, and I do respond to every message I receive. So with that in mind, you can contact me on X at legendbones, Blue Sky at legendbones, Mastodon at legendbones, at ttrpg-hangout.social, Instagram at legendofthebones, email at legendofthebones@gmail.com, or go to legendofthebones.blogspot.com for show notes, house rules, character profiles, art, maps and more. Join me next time to find out what awaits our adventurers as the bones decide their fate. None shall escape the destiny of Bone.
the Dungeons & Dragons Podcast UK present The Secret of the Silver City. Accompanied by a delightful fruit bat with a liking for liquor and a passive-aggressive haversack, a tight-knit team set forth with an assignment to aid the Archangel Everson as they battle, bungle, and burgle their way across Innistrad in a gripping tale that gathers momentum. Their convoluted trail sees them collide with a host of strange situations and colorful characters.
Ogvar, have you lost your head?
No, I was trying to make him lose his, but it's not going well.
Look what I've just found.
Right, geezers. What happened to your eyebrows?
They're well prepared, aren't they?
Awesome.
It's taken them 6 seconds to get it in the place of the old one.
That's easy.
Where chronic corruption, skullduggery, crazed cultists, and gambling in a criminal underworld become the new norm, the companions experience the seedier and more sinister side of city life, with peculiar portals, maligned monsters, and dark deeds lurking menacingly in the shadows.
You should have simply rolled over and faded into nothingness. You've chosen warfare, and it is warfare you shall have.
You have got to be joking.
Slamming her again, and you see Elora's nose breaks with a gush of blood.
I say, that's not very sporting, is it?
The cubes of favor are not always convivial, and bad rolls can bring baleful consequences. Pick up our streaming links, search the Dungeons & Dragons Podcast UK, or join us on Twitter at Podcast Team UK.